We are today working with 46 companies today. Fetty's back there. We just went through our Monday review board, and 46 companies. Record number for my little small but mighty firm. And last year we worked with nearly 200 companies. Before working at my own company, I was a Chief Human Resources Officer at the City of Portland. Before that, I was at the Oregon Department of Education as a Human Resources Director. Before that, I was at Kaiser Permanente in a highly matrixed HR system. So HR is what I live and breathe, and there are never usually any questions that I cannot answer. So if you got them, ask them. Shall we get started? Let's do it. So we're going behind the curtain. And I want to know, what is one mystery about management or human resources you'd like to understand? Throw it out there. What's something that pissed you off, right? What's something that irritated you, or you're like, well, how does that even make sense? Or why is the time to fill 90 days? If it's 90 days, it's too long. Or anything like that. Like, tell me, what kind of questions have been on the backs of your mind around human resources or management decisions that you did not understand? What you got? Oh, why is it taking so long to let go of the person who is clearly not doing their job and everybody knows it and is making everyone upset? Why are they still here? No, I love that question. And you know what's really interesting? It's such a common question that it is a scenario that I'm going to give you in about 40 minutes after I give you some detailed and some background information. I'm going to give you the scenario and ask you, based on everything I've shared with you today, how would you deal with this very specific scenario in a small group? All right? Love that question. Coming back at you very soon. What else we got? There was another hand that came up over here. Yes? Ooh. What's your name? I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. Keisha. Did I say it right, Keisha? Keisha. That question comes up a lot. So you need a third party. It's either a third party law firm or it's a third party human resources firm that comes in to say, you got to tighten this up. So for instance, I am an expert witness or expert analyzer for a lot of employment departments who are suing corporations. And they bring me in if the HR team, because employment is always going to interface with HR. HR did or did not do something. They'll give me all of the discovery, and I'll go through, and I'll be like, well, you did what? Or like, no, they did this perfectly. This is perfect. The outcome, this is just the risk associated with human beings, but then sometimes there are gaps. So it's one of two things happen to assess whether or not HR is doing the right things or the wrong things, and that's bringing in a third party to come in and assess, analyze, or a law firm because you've been getting sued or you've got a revolving door of talent and they're complaining about human resources and you need to get someone to come in there to assess what's going on. But another question that I get pretty often is, who's HR for HR, right? So HR gets kicked around quite a bit. Who do I complain to if my boss sucks, right, as HR? When I am HR. And usually the only outcome, especially if your boss is the CEO, is to go to the board, which 70% chance that's gonna go, 70% chance that's gonna go bad. And, or you have to file a complaint through BOLI or through a tort claim or something of that nature. So it's a great question. There was a hand that came up over here on this side, I thought I saw. Was there a hand? Yes, please. Ooh, great question. How small is your small business? Yeah, so you should just use a fractional. We can talk about that one, but you don't need HR yet. You are HR. Is it your business? Yeah, it's you. You are HR. Until you're about 10, you should probably have about a person who's half their job is doing some human resources stuff. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna get going. I love the kinds of questions that you're asking. This will be fun. Okay, so there are three things that we're going to do today. And again, you have a breakout session. I'm going to be asking some questions along the way. So let's make it interactive. It's more fun that way. Number one, understand the core responsibilities of HR management when it comes to personnel issues. What is your job? What is management's role and human resources role when it comes to the workforce? What can you do? What can't you do? Number two, enhance awareness of confidentiality and decision-making processes. Under what circumstances should something remain confidential? And when are you just saying it should be confidential when you could share it? There's nothing that is stopping you from sharing this information. So I want you to walk away with, a tool belt full of opportunity for challenging, professionally, nicely challenging HR and management to say, like, I think we could unpack that a bit more and share a bit more. Number three, improve communication and collaboration in the workplace, right? So if we actually get more understanding of what can and cannot happen, it will. The more information is out there, the higher the likelihood that people will trust more, be willing to collaborate more, and think outside of the box. So that's number three is the outcome I hope happens from our conversation together today. Okay, so in order for you to really understand what HR and management's roles and responsibilities are, we gotta go through a little bit of a timeline. And that's small. And I just talked to this side of the room at least. These are not just cute glasses. I cannot see, okay? So I'd have to get real close. So I'm gonna go over here so I can read it from this spot right here. So in the 1900s, that is when human resources came to begin with, all right? It focused almost solely on administrative tasks, and we were called personnel. Some people still call themselves personnel. Steer clear of those organizations, all right? It's the truth. If you're still calling your HR personnel from the 1920s or the early 1900s, 1903, that's usually the lens through which they are looking at you as a cog in their wheel, okay? It was more about managing paperwork than engaging in the employees on a deeper level, right? There was no difference between the logs that were coming in to make paper and the people moving the logs on the big rotators to make the paper. There was no distinction that was being taken into consideration. So that was the early phases of human resources, but we have evolved over time. 1920s and 40s, we had employee welfare and industrial psychology. This is around World War II, okay? There was something really particular that happened during World War II. A lot of dudes went off to the war, and we still needed to make guns, we needed to make cars, we needed to make a whole lot of stuff, and that's when a lot of women entered the workforce. So all of a sudden, you started to get into industrial psychology, daycare, all of these fringe benefits that really became available overnight. Imagine that. Overnight, things that people said were nearly impossible to create became available overnight because they wanted to get that workforce into the workplace. But 1920s and 40s, employee welfare started to gain momentum. Productivity became a big part of the conversation to figure out how do you get an employee to be optimally positioned to work. The number one way is to make them a little bit happy, right? And in the 1930s, unions gained steam and became codified by law, that unions could exist. That happened in the 1930s, which really turned a page for human resources. Because all of a sudden, these leaders, these business owners, they were like, we need someone to directly interface with the union. They're coming and they're asking us questions about the workforce, and we'd really like to not talk about this at all. Imagine that, right? So HR became really, really prevalent and present in the workplace to engage with the unions, and there were some ladies in the workplace as well. And by the way, back then, HR was exclusively women. Now today, HR is still about 83, I think is what Sherm came up with, 83% women. So, we're evolving. 1950s and 60s, we had the structured human resources department, right, where we started to talk about efficiency and job satisfaction. A lot of those evaluations came to be in the 1950s and 60s. Companies started to recognize the importance of employee engagement, the scores, the analyzing it. All those things happened in the 50s and 60s. 70s and 80s, strategic HR, right? So I think this is when the business partner came to be. Was that? Strategic roles, emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion. People think DEI started during George Floyd. These are people who don't Google, right? Started in the 70s and the 80s. And then laws were actively taking shape with Civil Rights Act, equal EEO, equal employment opportunity. All those things came to be. And that's really the origins of a lot of the diversity, equity, and inclusion work that exists still today. Okay, we're almost there. In the 90s, we prioritized employee engagement, developed performance management systems, and try to retain talent as well. So that was in the 90s. The 2000s, we got the business partner. In the 2000s, I was in the industry at that point in time, right? Because I am old. I was born in the late 1900s, okay? I was. And that is when people started to say, human resources needs to understand the business, right? You are not just transactionalist. You need to understand what the P&L is, the cost and the expenses associated with the workforce, how to incentivize people with bonuses in certain disciplinary areas, using data to make sound decisions instead of just kind of like, spitballing it. The professionalization of the human resources professional really took shape in the 2000s. And our expectation to join forces with managers, to understand your operations, to understand your challenges and opportunities, to understand your stress points, et cetera, that happened in the 2000s. Over the past 25 years, that is when that has been really taking shape. And then 2010s until present, employee welfare and industrial psychology is continuing to take shape. I mean, just remember, 6 years ago, 2018, 2019, it was totally inappropriate to come into the workplace and talk aggressively about political issues or social issues in the workplace. We would say, you do not bring that into the workplace, take that outside. And now it is the starting point of a lot of these social conversations are happening directly in the workplace. Times are changing incredibly fast, right? And it is the expectation of human resources to lead that evolution in the workplace from a people and culture standpoint. The way marketing is expected to pivot with social media and putting things in print versus, whatever it is that marketing people do. And the finance industry to lead us in understanding the books. And the IT industry in evolving with the changing landscape of technology. HR's responsibility is the people and the culture in the workplace. How are we being responsive? How are we not trying to force them to go in a particular direction, but to evolve with them? All right? That's the timeline. And the timeline is important because the timeline lets you see one of the statements that people make all the time. So we're going to talk about some perception versus reality components, okay, gang? I'm going to tell you things people say that are not so nice about HR. Some of these things we've earned. Some of these things, all these things we've earned. Not some of them, we earned them all right? A lot of people see us as gatekeepers. They see us as the policing arm of organizations. They see us as obstacles, right? They see us as the department of no, right? They see human resources professionals as something to avoid versus a department to embrace. And it is something I am working very hard to disrupt, to interrupt, because we really do need to be a partner, and we can partner. And by the way, when you have that feeling, that kind of tension between yourself and human resources, understand that human resources department is also not thriving. They're not. They feel like they are constantly embattled. They feel like they are constantly on defense, right? Which makes them say no more, which makes them double down more, which makes them not open up to what are the possibilities, right? It's not a good environment for HR or for the workforce when you are in direct opposition with them. Nobody likes it. So I want you to know that, right? Because sometimes it's hard for you to see the humanity of the executive leadership team or the human resources department because you believe they have all the power. We have all the power, and we do have some power, but we also don't have some power, right? So let's unpack some of these perceptions. HR is only there to protect the company. Well, the reality is that HR should be a balance between both the employee and the organization, ensuring fair treatment for all. That's what it should be. But more times than not, human resources will bend to the will of management. And when HR bends to the will of management, and if you talk to management, they'll say that they tell me no all the time, right? But the perception is that HR is always on the side of management, and you can't trust them, and you should try to keep as little information share as little information as possible with them. And this comes from the start of the union. So when the unions took shape in the 1930s, HR was put in between management and the workforce by way of the union, right? It was a us versus them. And management, or the HR was representing management at those union interfacing points, and the union was representing the workforce, right? That's where that sentiment came from. And up until recently, a lot of HR people felt like when they got into human resources, their sole job was to protect management from its workforce. So we lead with risk mitigation, right? Well, it's risky if you talk to her about that. It's risky if you tell them why you didn't select them for that job, right? Most people, if you apply for a job, you go through an interview, how many people here are like, no, don't tell me why you didn't select me? Raise a hand if you don't want to know why they didn't select you, right? Right? Most people want to know why you were selected. It's risky. It's very risky to tell you why I didn't select you, because then you want to argue with me about it, right? You want to argue with me about it, and then you can overlay race, you can overlay gender, you can overlay religion, a lot of other protected class things, and now I'm like, uh-oh, they just used some buzzwords that I could be sued with. So you get advice. HR will oftentimes, especially in big ecosystems, think state of Oregon, think the entire state of Vancouver, think, Providence Healthcare, right? Think these big ecosystems. If you're trying to manage wide-scale risk, you'll tell the manager, hey, you got an internal candidate, you let them know that they did a great job, wonderful job, you almost made it, this person just had a little bit more experience in the area that you didn't have. Which area? Pick a bullet, any bullet. Your decision. You said you had 6 years, they got 7. They had 6 years, 3 months, right? And it's to because if you went into the interview and you didn't articulate X, Y, Z, well, you didn't ask me that. Well, really what I think it is that Mary didn't like me. People don't want to do that. So this is where the HR is only there to protect the company comes from. There is some of that's present. I'm not gonna lie to you and say that it's not. I have literally advised people, don't do that. Now you know that she comes in hot. If you tell her the truth, we'll be dealing with that for the next 7 months. Don't do it. It's not ideal, but it's the reality. Who here is a supervisor of other individuals? You ever had an employee who is difficult? Right? Do you do things to reduce the likelihood of having to engage in that difficultness? Yes, you do. Right? So it's not just that HR is just protecting the employer. HR is sometimes protecting the ecosystem from a dramatic blow up. But on the same token, it's not an optimal situation to be a part of. I am one who believes that if it's an internal candidate and you've got a relationship with them, give them the feedback and let them know. I was reluctant to give the feedback because I did not want to have a contentious back and forth. Not to say that you would, just to say that was an anxiety that I had. However, I know that this feedback will help you become stronger for your next opportunity, so that's why I'm sharing it. When you give that preamble, it changes the tone and the tenor of the relationship. It changes their likelihood of being able to come at you like this, and they appreciate the feedback a bit more. I'm only looking at you because I started there with the illustration. It's not personal. I know you would rock that interview, right? HR balances the need of both the employee and the organization to ensure fair treatment and compliance at the exact same time. That's what it's supposed to be, but also understand that reality is also being managed. The next one here is managers just assign tasks and discipline employees. Like, they're not doing the work, they're not paying attention, they're not engaging with me. And you know what? Some managers aren't doing the work, aren't paying attention, don't care about you. There's some people who are managers, and that is a major challenge that, quite frankly, human resources and the executive team or whoever that person's boss is should be trying to evaluate and explore, because when you become a manager, even a working manager who has widgets to produce as well, your primary job is to spend time with your workforce and to engage with them and understand what they need. So managers should be providing guidance, supporting growth, facilitating team success, bridging a lot of the conflicts, et cetera. I would say for every one manager who does this really, really well, I've got 200 that don't. That's probably my ratio. The number one source of stress and contention in the workplace is through management. It's not through the executive team, unless a member of the executive team is your direct manager, or human resources. It's through your direct supervisor, not dealing with the things that need to be dealt with, right? Now, sometimes they're dealing with them and they just can't share it with you, which we're going to get to in just a bit. But more times than not, they're just not dealing with it, right? So more times than not, they're just not dealing with it. And then it doesn't make you feel like a real part of the fabric of the organization. So that's where the perception comes from. Number 3, HR decides salaries arbitrarily. Oh, you want to know the 2 things that will frustrate a workforce very quickly? 2 things. What's the first one? You know it. We're talking about it. Money. What's the second one? What you got? What you got? Don't be scared. Parking. Move parking, increase parking, take away parking, make parking super far away. Oh my gosh. Money and parking. The two things that I'm just like, no. I don't want to touch it. Yikes, everybody will unanimously be angry at the same time. HR decides salaries arbitrarily. That's just wrong. That's patently wrong, right? But if you cannot explain it, right, you got this grid that maybe a third party, maybe Workplace Change built for you, and you don't understand it at all, and you're like, per the grid, and you can't explain the grid, it feels arbitrary, right? The reality is that salaries are determined by market trends, internal equity, and budget constraints. So if you go to Glassdoor, don't go to Glassdoor. But if you go to Glassdoor and you find that an analyst 3 is getting paid $2.4 billion a year, right? Please don't bring that back and say, like, per the market, I need a 7,000% increase. And I mean, I'm being facetious only a bit, though. Like, folks go to Glassdoor and all of a sudden they're coming in with these random whacked out numbers where they need a 50% increase because this is what's fair and this is my value add. I know that money is sensitive for people. Money becomes the language used to tell a person their value at the organization, right? That's how people see it, and I get it, and I know it's sensitive, and I know that your livelihood is tethered to that number. I get it. And if I were Trump for a day, you'll get $1 million. You'll get $1 million, right? Like, just gonna shoot those jokers out. But that's not the way that it works, right? So even if you, like, people who work, anybody here work at a nonprofit? Okay? So nonprofits, you will look at the market, but then you will take that market information and then kind of like overlay your budget onto that market information. What you do is we do a lot of classification and compensation work at Workplace Change. So let's say, I'm gonna make it super simple. Let's say that you've got an analyst making $10. The market says that an analyst should make $10, that a manager of an analyst should make $15, and that a director of those two should make $20. That's what the market says they should be paid. But your budget only allows for that role to be about 50% or 25% less than what the market is paying, because nonprofits don't pay what Wyden and Kennedy or Bank of America pays. It's not the same. So but the gradation should be the same, right? So you take the budget you're working within and you keep that percentage delta similar, right? So as you can see, I think it was like a 20% variance between the analyst, the supervisor, the manager, or whatever 3 levels that I came up with. Your gradation could be, and should be, I would say, based on the market, a 20% gradation from the bottom of it to the top. Does that make sense? What I'm not saying is fix your, break the bank. Pay them exactly what Wyden and Kennedy pays. You cannot. And you have to be able to articulate that to your workforce, what I just very quickly did. Look, I understand that the market pays 25% above what we are. We use the same gradation they use, but we don't have the margins they have. So this is how we come up with this calculus. This is the algorithm that we use. Having that kind of sophisticated understanding of the way your compensation works makes all the difference in the world, right? In the absence of that, and you're like, no, we just figured that it feels arbitrary. You see how it works? Okay? All right, there's one more of these, this one. Perception versus reality. HR can share employee-related information, but we choose not to. Right? The reality is that HR has to keep certain information confidential, right? Right? HR has to keep certain information even confidential from your manager. So if you come to me after you return from maternity leave, which just happened with the client that we have not too long ago, they don't have an HR. This person didn't feel comfortable talking to her direct supervisor about an accommodation. We provide them with fractional HR support. So she comes to us and she explains that she had a vaginal birth, and it led to some significant physiological challenges, which requires her to be able to, she needed to like twice a day or every 3 hours get up and move in a particular way. And this was a call center where you're kind of tethered to the computer and your phone. And so she was asking for an accommodation. And by the way, there are very boutique call center places where people farm it out, and you get Jenny and the Geniettes, and they answer the calls and they're tapped into your system. So this is a small boutique firm, and they provide call center support to a variety of outlets. It's a super cool organization. This is in California where this place is. But the point that I'm making is that is HIPAA information, right? That is ADA information that is deeply and profoundly protected. So now when we call back and say, hey, we validated it, this employee does need accommodations of this nature, and the manager's like, well, what's wrong with her? Well, we can't divulge that information, right? That person's not happy with us. What do you mean you can't divulge the information? I'm our manager, I'm our supervisor, you can divulge it. We cannot divulge it. It's medical information, we can't divulge it. Well, is it, then they guess. Is it this? Is it that? What is happening? HR cannot share all the things. Oh, you don't want to know the area that people get most upset with us? Investigations. Number one, I really dislike investigations. They are important, right? But they should be seldomly used, rarely used, only in the most extreme circumstances that a conversation will not do, all right? Because in investigations, number one, to start, over 90% of investigations are unsubstantiated. All of them. Over 90% of investigations, probably more than that, are unsubstantiated, okay? When you're investigating only a few things. Was a law broken? Was a policy broken? Was a rule broken? Boom. Those are the 3 categories. So if Demi, is that your name? If I don't like Demi, right? And I say, I do like Demi. Demi's lovely. I love that blue sweater, the turtleneck. If I don't like Demi, and I say, Demi is creating a hostile work environment for me, and is bullying me, and I use all these trigger words, and I'm like, we gotta engage in an investigation. The likelihood that I'm able to substantiate that Demi has engaged in hostile work environment and formal bullying, right, on a day-to-day basis in the workplace is very low. So HR comes back, they do the investigation, which they should not have, because the end of where the discussion should start is that Serilda and Demi just have beef, and we need to figure out how to get them on the same page together. That's what's really going on here. Most investigations are between people who don't like each other. Imagine that. So they do the investigation, and they come back to Serilda, who made the allegation against you. Right now HR has now talked to dozens of people to ask if Demi is engaging in bullying and hostile work environment. Unsubstantiated, which is 99% of the time what's going to happen. They come back to me and say, Serilda's unsubstantiated. So my pain could not be substantiated? Am I satisfied with the unsubstantiated finding? Absolutely not. You know who's raging mad? Demi. And you know what Demi's going to say afterwards? After she's been dragged through the mud, after all these people have picked her apart, Demi's going to say, now what are you going to do to Serilda? What's her consequence? Unsubstantiated. Nothing there. She's made my environment hostile. She's bullying me, right? Now we're in this circular loop of doom. It's a doom loop. That's also what I think they call Portland. It was in a doom. A doom. I think that was in the Oregonian. It's a little doomy. It's a little doomy out there. But it doesn't, everybody loses in that situation. So you get this situation where, and now Demi wants to know who you talked to. Demi wants to know what they said. Demi wants to know all these additional pieces of information that are protected. It is protected by all state laws and federal laws to say that you cannot divulge investigative information unless it has been requested by public information requests, which would not include an investigative report unless it came directly from a lawyer through, what's it called? Through a subpoena. Exactly. That's the only way. Wait, how am I doing? I'm doing great. I'm nailing it. Okay. So HR can share all the information, but they don't. It's not true. It's just not true. And some of these things that we're doing, we shouldn't have done it to start. But once you start it, now it's protected by certain things, and we're stuck. We're stuck, right? The next one is managers have full control over decision making. Who's a manager here? Do you have full control over all decisions? Exactly. Let's just move on. I don't understand why individual contributors like, the manager could just do the thing. And then managers, stop blaming things on HR. I would do it. I'd give it to you. HR said, I give you the promotion, but HR said, you knew you were never going to promote her. You don't like her. But HR said, right, always. Who here works in HR? Hey, they're like, testify. Can I get a hallelujah? And then the last one here is HR is unapproachable and disconnected from employees. We shouldn't be, but when we make certain clauses like let's investigate everything, when we make certain clauses like let's say no to everything, when we do certain things like let's not explain how we made the decision on your compensation, when we tell people that we don't have any feedback for them on how it is they can get that next promotion, when we don't give people what they need, which is mostly just a conversation and some time, you become unapproachable. And you become it's how people get kind of onboarded. Like folks are like, hey, just so you know, I don't know about the previous HRs you worked with, but this HR, you don't want to go there and let them know about a concern. Because if you tell them a concern, they're going to investigate it. And when they investigate the concern, it's going to ruin your life. Right? Right? HR is a resource for employees, providing support for workplace issues, benefits, and career development. That's who we should be. Now, again, this is the reality of who we should be, but the perception is oftentimes earned. It's oftentimes earned, right? So we have to actually challenge human resources to do a few things a bit differently. So we're going to talk a little bit about confidentiality, and I'm going to move through this slide really quickly because I want to show you a bit of a flow chart. Take a picture of this flow chart and call that flow chart, not this one, not the, you can't, but you don't have to take a picture of this one. There's a really valuable one coming up. All right, confidentiality matters, protecting employee privacy, HIPAA, information that is being submitted for OFLA or what's the Washington Family Medical Leave information, right? Protected information, social security numbers, things like that. There's some stuff that we need to guard per federal and state laws. Maintaining a fair and safe workplace, right? So not telling someone what your disciplinary action is. So for instance, why is this person still working here? What you may not know is that this person is on a last chance agreement or on a performance improvement plan, right? A PIP, or they got an evaluation and they got 0 out of 5. And so they've got 3 months to make some tangible changes or they're out. Now you may feel like, why are we having to continue to deal with this individual? And they're like, we're dealing with it, we're addressing it. And you're like, how? You cannot share personnel information in that way, right? Imagine who here has ever been on a performance improvement plan? Really? I should have been on a performance improvement plan at one time. I made some mistakes. I was like, man, they let me get away with that. Now that I'm in HR, right? But a performance improvement plan, would you want all of your colleagues to know that you were on a performance improvement plan? No. Absolutely not. So for you to ask to know that information about someone else, like how, what? You wouldn't want it to be shared. And so from a fairness standpoint, I can't share someone else's. But please know that it is being addressed. Now, usually a lot of HR people will just shut the conversation down. What I like to say is I cannot share with you anyone's personnel matter. But please know that we are dealing with this very directly. And if you continue to see challenges present themselves, bring those challenges to me. Are you still seeing challenges today? Let's talk about what those challenges are, right? Because then I can follow up with the individual and say, like, how are we progressing? I hear there's still some challenges, right? But I can't tell you specifically what happened. Legal and ethical obligations, right? There are legal and ethical obligations that will prevent you from sharing confidential information. There's some stuff that cannot be shared. And then building trust in HR and leadership. Sometimes divulging too much information makes it so that I'm not going to come back to you to have a conversation with you in the future. I went and talked to HR yesterday, and they told all my business. I went to them in confidence and said that I was struggling with something, and next thing I know, 5 people are like, how you doing with Gary? You and Gary all right? I only talked to HR about that. How would they know about me and Gary, right? That's why the confidentiality matters. People come to HR with some of the most sensitive issues and topics. I'm trying to get pregnant with IVF. I need to flex my days. My mom died. My closest best friend passed away. My dog is sick, right? And that's my friend, right? Like, there are things folks are coming and talking to you about, hopes and dreams and fears, and that information has to be a vault inside human resources more times than not. And if it's not a vault, well, you got a problem on your hands. All right, so there's some things from a transparency and HR standpoint to take into consideration. There's a little flow chart here, okay? Transparency. I talk about integrating transparency into human resources all the time. I live it, I breathe it, I believe in it. I believe there's a lot more in HR that can be shared, a lot more from managers that can be shared to the workforce than we currently are. And this is the flow chart we, by and large, use. Decision, all right? So you have the thing that you're determining how much information can I share out with the workforce. Number one, does the decision involve confidential information, yes or no, right? Does the decision involve confidential information? Legal, ethical, right? Employee privacy, right? That kind of thing. Next up, is the confidentiality legally or ethically required? If it was a no, is the decision organizationally sensitive? When you think organizationally sensitive, is the information going to divulge that a reduction in force is happening? That we're about to merge with another organization. We're doing a merger right now. The workforce does not know anything about the merger, because if they did, they'd freak out. Yeah, we don't need them to freak out yet, right? We need to get some things under control, be able to answer some questions before the freak out ensues, right? Is it sensitive? Is there going to be a reorg, a collapse of a department integrated into another department, right? Those kinds of questions, yes or no, right? From the confidentiality legally or ethically required, if it's no, can transparency be increased without risk? If it's yes, limit information shared and communicate process only. So when I say that something is legally, it's sensitive, you can't share the nuanced details. Let's say investigation, for instance. I can't tell you everyone we talked to. I can't give you the final report, but I can tell you what the process was. And I can tell you the kinds of questions we asked. That goes a long way. Has anyone here ever been investigated? No? Wow. Did it feel good? It felt awful. Has anyone here ever been audited by the federal government? How'd that feel? Yeah, that's how an investigation feels. It feels very similar. You don't know what they're looking for. You don't know what you did wrong. You start guessing. You start like, well, is it the day? They don't even give you the parameters of the moment that occurred. You don't know who's involved. You don't know anything. But we can tell you process. We can tell you the duration. We can tell you those kinds of things, all right? All right, and so limit information, share, communicate process only, share key decision making. If it can be shared, without there being risk, without you breaching confidentiality, then share it openly. And quite frankly, put it in a memo and send it to everybody. The more information you can share, the better. But if it cannot be shared because it would divulge sensitive information, disciplinary information, or things of that nature, you gotta keep it close to the vest. Double down on process. Okay? And tell them why. Tell them the why. All right? So we're going to do a case study. This case study is to help close out our conversation. You're actually going to talk amongst your peers about this situation based on the conversation we've had today. I'm going to read this. I'm going to read it from here. So here's the case study. The manager's dilemma. Alex is a mid-level manager in a growing company. One of Alex's team members, Jordan, has been underperforming for the past 3 months. Jordan recently confided in Alex that they are struggling with a personal issue, but did not provide details, right? So Jordan went to Alex and said, hey man, I'm going through something, it's pretty significant. Meanwhile, the other team members have noticed Jordan's declining performance and have started questioning why Alex is not addressing the situation. Challenges. Alex wants to support Jordan while maintaining their confidentiality. Number 2, the rest of the team is feeling the strain of Jordan's decreased productivity, so they're having to pick up all of Jordan's pieces. This is a very busy organization. And 3, leadership is expecting Alex to maintain performance standards. He has metrics that he has to meet for his team. And it's a lean team, and he's got one person who's down, but showing up every day, but just not performing. So my question for you is, one, how can Alex balance transparency with confidentiality in this situation? How do you talk about the situation? And not just say, hey man, Jordan is really going through it. Not an option to say that. Two, what steps can Alex take to support Jordan while also ensuring the team's workload is managed fairly? Because remember, the issue is the team is taking on all this burden, and it is real. Number three, how can Alex communicate with the team to maintain trust without breaching Jordan's privacy? And four, what policies or resources might HR provide to assist Alex in navigating this dilemma? There are four things that you and find a trio, find 4 or 5 people, I don't care how big the groups are, it's inconsequential. I'm gonna give you 6 minutes to get together, to have a conversation, coming your way, and then I wanna hear from a couple groups. What you got?
Okay, 4 to 3 months, was Jordan a pretty good employee?
Jordan he was mid. Okay. Jordan was like, he was 6.8.